So if we could kindly ask you to turn your cameras off and stay on mute for the first 20 minutes of this discussion. And during the last 10, we'll be trying to have any of your questions answered, and you can unmute yourselves then. And feel free to drop your questions in the chat as well. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining USEBA with our discussion with Todd Sargent. So as I just said, this event would not have been possible without our board members. So that would be myself. And you guys can go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Sure. My name is Lenny Washington, upcoming fourth year senior majoring in geography and environmental studies.
Hi guys, my name is Layla. I'm entering my senior year. I'm a sociology major.
Hey, I'm Josh. I'm an econ major, and I'll be co-hosting this with Edith today. So for those of you who aren't familiar with USEBA, I know we have a lot of Disney fanatics here for the first time. We're a student-run organization, and we're dedicated to connecting students like you guys who are interested in sports and entertainment careers with industry professionals like Todd. Our members gain a competitive advantage by having access to sports and entertainment-related seminars, networking events, and internship opportunities.
So we encourage you all to follow USEBA on our social medias, which you will see on the screen. Awesome. So here you will always be updated with any of our webinars, resources, internships, and networking opportunities that would be really amazing for anyone who wants to get into the entertainment and sports industry. And keep an eye out for board member applications. If you're passionate about what USEBA is doing, we will be having applications out soon. So make sure to follow us and keep an eye out.
Cool. And as Edith said at the beginning, we're having 20 minutes of kind of like a interview type style thing between me and her, interviewing Todd, and then the last 10 minutes, if you guys want to turn on your camera and unmute and ask Todd questions, or even just type them in the chat, we'll see what we can do. And again, thank you so much for letting us record for all the people who couldn't be here live. So
without further ado, I'd like to introduce Todd Sargent, the Global Organization Development Leader at Walt Disney Company. Thank you so much for being here with us. And to kick off our questions, we'd like to ask you about your career journey and how you got to where you are now. So specifically, what are your strategies for balancing work with family, and how did you manage a busy schedule as an undergrad, and how did that prepare you for this career?
Those are about 4 questions. So I started very early in the entertainment industry. I worked for Disney when I was in high school and college. So all through UCLA, I worked seasonally at the Disneyland Resort as a performer. And so I started there, started to build my understanding and relationship with Disney, and then, balancing that with the university activities. I was very involved as an undergrad. I graduated class in 1996, where, as a student, I was involved in activities from Student Alumni Association to undergraduate student association, residential life, and fraternity life. And so for me, I always knew that I had a passion around the industry. There was no organization such as this back when I was a student, and so I think you had to really work to build relationships and connections. To fast forward, I did eventually, about 3 years out of undergrad, got my MBA, focused on international marketing and business, and started a career in management consulting. So I didn't start with management consulting straight out of undergrad. I started out of business school, which was a political science undergraduate. And so that advanced degree did help me build some foundation to be to begin my career in consulting. And in consulting, for those of you familiar, you get a pretty broad understanding of the business, business needs and challenges and problem solving. And so as part of that, I began to specialize more and more on organizational development, human resources, change management. And Disney was a client of mine for many years, off and on. And so they recruited me. And about 3 years ago, I made the move over to Disney. They created the job for me to lead global change management and organizational development. projects, and I'm based out of the Glendale Creative Campus in Southern California, for those of you out of the area. And I also regularly, in normal times, would be at our parks and resorts. So I do have a responsibility for one of our 4 segments, and that's our parks, experiences, and products. And so I touch all of the 3-dimensional product offerings across the Walt Disney Company. So I have counterparts over at the Walt Disney Studios, Media Networks Television, and our direct-to-consumer Disney Plus space. And so now the second half of your question was, how do you balance it all together, right? I think it's just I live or die by my calendar, which I think the leaders of this organization heard a little bit about right before everyone joined. And so what I try to do is really empower the team around me so that they can take on as much as they can in my stead, and they're able to execute against it. I just try to be really efficient with my time. I try to keep a level of work-life balance. I don't know if that's the right word anymore. Work-life blend, I think, is probably a more realistic way of looking at it. But I do maintain, I think, a pretty healthy, set of interests outside of work. But work can be really fun too. When I think about the type of work that I get to do and the types of projects and people, et cetera, that I work in, it's not as it's a lot of fun too. So I think it's an important thing is to find work that you're passionate around, and make that blend work out between what your professional passions are and your personal passions. And if you can find something that intersects across the two, go for it. That's where you really should make your career.
Yeah, and I think a lot of undergrads, a lot of the time, it can feel like a lot of pressure to like decide like this early on what they're passionate about.
Yeah.
Was there like any specific moments in your life that made you feel like you could see yourself doing consulting work like long term?
No, I fell into consulting accidentally. It was not what my goal was through business school. I had intended to go into a different direction, but it's all circumstances and timing and somewhat luck. When I was finishing up business school in 2001, that was the era of what we called the dot-com bust, which some of you may be familiar with. It was a lot of the work that was being done on the e-com side was imploding. And so the company that I was intending to go work for held on they rescinded job offers. And I had I considered it a backup offer from what's now Accenture. It was Anderson Consulting at the time. And I said, I'll do it for about a year. I can learn a few things and move back into the space that I'm really passionate around. I think through projects and experiences and over time, what I learned is that consulting really worked well with my professional needs. I was able to change gears regularly through different clients, different experiences. I was able to start focusing. I think a company of the size of Accenture allowed me to start, targeting a little bit more about where I wanted to spend my energies and how I wanted to develop my own professional skills. So I really did take advantage of working for a global consulting firm and other consulting firms over time. I still consider myself a consultant, right? The only difference now is that I have one client and I don't have to get on the plane quite as often as I used to, although I still do. So I think what I learned is that consultants are problem solvers, and I like to solve problems. I like to have the ideation. I like to think about strategically and then tactically how to execute. And I like to ultimately see the benefits of the consulting work that I do, which is actually, I didn't get that benefit in management consulting. Oftentimes you deliver it, you end the project, you move on to the next thing. What I love about the entertainment industry, and I love it about Disney in particular, is I'm able to see, outcomes from the work that I do in a really material way, and with the brand that I'm really proud of, with the company that I have a lot of personal passion around. And I enjoy it quite a bit.
Awesome. So now that you do have this career and job, how important do you think it was to leverage things like the Career Center, alumni, or people within your network to get to where you are now?
I think it's critically important. I didn't really give much of that time between undergrad and graduate school, but I got my first job out of UCLA through the Career Center. I went through Career Center interview processes and career or resume reads, et cetera. And so I always credit that team there for really helping me get my, get my ducks in line and being able to get a great job. I think the network becomes, it goes through ebbs and flows in your career. I think the network's really important when you start in order to find something that you're really passionate around, something that's going to give you a leg up, particularly in entertainment, which is often a relationship-based business, both sports and entertainment. Over time, the network is built internal to the organization that you're at. So it's less important for me to have deep relationships outside of Disney, but it's critically important that I build and maintain relationships within my company. And so, good news is I work for a large company that has a pretty significant base of people that I have sort of natural relationships with through, being alumni of UCLA, et cetera, and other community involvements. And so for me, the network is, it's important. And I think you should take advantage of the systems and the tools that are out there. So whether it's, UCLA One or the Career Center or, any sort of informal way to reach out and build relationships, they don't hurt. They don't always help though either, because if you're not qualified for the work or if you don't have the right fit, just because you have that relationship isn't going to necessarily get you the job. But, in a world where I'll post a role and get 250 solid applications for a single job, sometimes those relationships do help with, help with paper cuts and getting people through initial conversations. But it doesn't get you the job necessarily. But what I found is once you're in the company, networks are everything. We make decisions. Global development, org development is I'm co-creating with business leaders across the company about how do they execute against their strategy? What's the talent? What are the people? What are the skills that they need in order to be successful? And so a lot of that is identifying where we've got the right people to fill the right types of needs. And so you better believe that my network, my relationships, my understanding of what people's skills are going to be critically important to help with that.
Yeah, and thank you again so much for still being so involved in the UCLA family and giving back. But to that end, you talk about what you do for a job, and in your own words, you've said working this job for Disney is like creating the best place to work at the happiest place on earth. And do you think with how big of a brand Disney is and all the branding all the protecting of the brand, the family brand, can it be hard to keep all of your cast members accountable to that standard at all times, especially in the park?
Absolutely. There's a human element that you can't walk away from, that not everyone's cut from the same approach. And in fact, we love that. We love the diversity. We love having the different perspectives that people bring. The difference is in live entertainment, right? You have to have a level of consistency and safety and appropriateness in how we do what we do. And so we spend a lot of time on learning and development, not to homogenize and have everyone do things in exactly the same way. That's not it at all. It's more of if there are certain ways to do things in order to keep our guests and our fellow cast members safe, and have consistently high outcomes and standards, that's where I think we hit. One of the interesting things I've seen, particularly in the COVID era, is everything my company does is public. Everything, if we make decisions about masks in our parks, it actually, makes it to the Associated Press and you get, you can read articles about it. Not many companies have that same level of visibility and scrutiny. And so I do think that we're very conscious about how to set our cast members, who we call most of our employees. Not all employees are cast members, but most are cast, crew, Imagineers, et cetera. But we set them up for success. And so what we try to do is provide the best level of support possible so that they're equipped to be successful, if that makes sense. And so where there is inconsistency, where there are standards and just general delivery issues, we try to address that in real time with real-time feedback. And so there are high expectations for working for Walt Disney Company, and particularly out in our live entertainment space where people are literally interacting with our guests on a daily basis.
Yes. So you mentioned right now how this pandemic affected your work. We were curious, how has Disney Parks specifically shifted due to COVID, or your role? How has that changed?
Well, again, a lot of this is public information, but we were dramatically impacted in the space that I work, right? From end of January when we started closing our Asia-based parks, and then in the United States when we started to close in March, we had to really shift to a new way of delivering things in the short term. And so we did make some really thoughtful and tough but important decisions around preserving the company for the future by taking some evasive actions around furlough, by during that furlough period continuing to pay for both the company and the employee benefits, health benefits during that time. We did shift obviously to an online culture. I've been working from home for 4 months. It's been very, very different from normal operations, and for most of my team too. We're still adjusting. We're still figuring it out. All of our businesses are still, trying to figure out what this means for the mid to long term. But obviously in some cases, so for those of you in Southern California, downtown Disney has reopened in Anaheim. And so that's, we've had to take much more security, not so much security, but health and safety protocols in order to ensure the safety of our employees, for our guests, and for everyone who comes and joins us at the sites. And so I think we've done what a lot of organizations have done, but we are, again, it comes back to that public scrutiny thing where we are held to a very high standard because we're Disney. So if we're gonna do it, we're not gonna be the first movers. Universal moved about a month before we did in Orlando, as an example, to reopen their parks. We didn't think we were ready yet. We needed to do some additional, support or infrastructure support. We needed to do some additional training. We needed to do some things to ensure that our employees and our guests, when they came back, were going to be as safe as possible. So it has absolutely shifted. It hasn't fundamentally shifted what we deliver. It's shifted a little bit how we deliver it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So when do you think we can expect parks to be back, and how do you think the fan experience will change as a result of all this?
Well, I can tell you, so 5 out of our 6 resorts across the globe are reopened. So the only park that's not reopened yet is the Disneyland Resort in Anaheim. So actually Hong Kong went through is in a government mandated shutdown temporarily too, but they were open for a period. I can tell you anecdotally that the park guest experience has been really positive. We've had obviously many calls and discussions around those sites that have reopened to see, is there a dramatically different experience? I think it's going to really rely on both a collaboration and agreement with our guests and our employees to ultimately, follow safety and health protocols and continue to deliver what we need to do. I think, if anyone's familiar with the parks, one of the key things we've done is reduce the capacity over the short term so that we can enforce physical distancing and allow still for a great guest experience. And so actually, I've had colleagues in Orlando tell me that, the guest experience is off the charts because it's so less crowded. And we've done such a great job of ensuring that there's, hand sanitizers, every 10 feet or whatever. And also ensuring that, we're still, our cast are still super engaged with our guests. And so I feel like, we are adjusting. We're what we call test and adjust at Disney all the time is we test things and adjust them. We pilot, we adjust, we make modifications. And we're rapidly learning as we go how to make it, a truly great guest and employee experience. That is it. It is, to be quite honest with you, our value equation is we take care of our employees, they'll take care of our guests, and the guests will keep coming back. And so that's been a critical thing for us through this whole thing is not just to ensure the safety and the experience of our paying guests, but also that the employees, our cast members, feel that they are and truly are well taken care of as part of the process.
Yeah, these are incredible times, and even beyond just the whole COVID thing, everything else that's going on in the world right now. And I know that you're super passionate about civil service and stuff. If you wanted to talk about how your experiences have been being an LA civil service commissioner, how has that gone, and how do you balance that with your job too and everything?
Well, so I've been a city commissioner in LA for about 9 years. I was appointed by now Mayor Garcetti, when he's still a city council member and president, to do that. It's an important part of who I am, just giving back to the community, being engaged in ways that I think I can provide some level of knowledge and expertise professionally and personally into helping with the community. And so, you know, I'm a non-compensated or volunteer commissioner and have been for quite some time. You know, the city, just like any other large organization, has had to go through a lot of rapid change in order to support the citizenry through, they rely on tax revenue largely, right, to ultimately deliver services. And when you have a major part of our economic engine in sort of a shutdown or slowdown mode, that revenue engine slows down. And so they've had to make a lot of changes. So my, fellow commissioners and across the city in different ways have helped contribute to adjust that. So LA believes really strongly in a citizen-based co-governance structure. And so there's a large, there are about 50 city commissions, and each of them have a very specific space. So the police commission, the fire commission, the water commission, et cetera. And so the work that I've done on civil service has really been around the employee experience, the employee journey for civil servants across the city of Los Angeles. And it has absolutely been it's been a lot of work for them. I'm in regular conversations with the chief human resources officer for the city of Los Angeles, who's become a great friend over the years. And we share a lot of suggestions on what's working for the city, what's working for Disney. And to be honest, they're pretty darn similar in kind of their challenges and issues, but also in how we've addressed them. So I think it's been an awesome way for me to fill my cup through civil engagement.
Cool.
All right, so if any of the student audience members have questions about Todd, specifically about his career consulting, feel free to put it in the chat, or we can unmute you if you want to put your camera on and say it.
So I see one in the chat right now, just got sent. Would you have any suggestions from your experience working with a variety of people at Disney for how undergrad students who aspire to enter the entertainment industry can stand out among other people interning?
Yeah, it's something that I didn't do as an undergrad, which is really take advantage of being in Los Angeles. I really do think it's the global entertainment hub. And there are so many opportunities. Now, granted, it's been odd, right? The last few months have been odd, but I still know that the industry continues to chug along, and there are opportunities to, either intern or volunteer or, have a shadow experience with an employee that works in the space. I think you should leverage the opportunity that you have as an undergraduate to reach out, ask questions, do informational interviews, learn the language. Sports and entertainment are very interesting in that there's almost a hidden language that you can't learn so easily in a classroom, that you learn by doing. And so I feel like you need to have that level of understanding of what the industry does, what's the economic equation, how do organizations make money, what kind of talent, what kind of skills do they value in order to ultimately deliver. And then you start to build those skills out. And so for me, when I look at folks that have been successful to the organization and coming in directly, and we do have a few specific feeder programs from undergraduate programs, those are the students that are just really go-getters. They're going to get out there, they're going to get really curious, they're going to ask a lot of questions, they're going to help bring concepts to the table, but they're also going to deliver against them. So I think it's important to be curious, ask questions, and solve. What I always tell people when they're going through an interview or an application process is really demonstrate how you are. Three things. One is how do you solve problems? How do you address issues with solid and concrete data-driven insights that ultimately provide some level of outcome? Secondly, what I say is you got to be able to work with others, play well with others. It's sort of something you learn in theory in preschool or kindergarten, but it plays out very, very cleanly in entertainment. You got to work in teams in order to be successful. And I hit on it just a little bit, but the third is just being comfortable with quantitative and qualitative analysis. and this is even for creatives, to be honest, you've got to be able to take into consideration all of the data that you have around you, whether it's anecdotal, whether it's hard data, and be able to tell stories from it and be able to leverage it to tell a better story. So even I think I saw someone with the chat about, creative storytelling. I think you got to know what kind of creative storytelling is selling now. What are the interesting stories that are out there? And data will inform that. And I don't think a lot of people can bridge all three of those things and ultimately deliver against them. So wherever you can get those exposures and experiences, take advantage of it. When I was an undergraduate, I mentioned I worked seasonally for Disney, but the reality was most of my experiences were through campus-based, leadership roles. And that was my story, right? So I had to take that story when I interviewed and shared it with employers or prospective employers, and be able to show how I was able to demonstrate how I thought, how I acted, how I followed through on my actions, how I looked at information, et cetera. So I think everyone follows their own unique course, but my recommendation is don't just stick to the classroom, so to speak, and really get as much information as you can, talk to people, learn from others, and grow from there.
Great advice. So Spencer B, I see you have your hand up. You can go ahead and unmute yourself to ask the question.
Sure. Sorry, I think Perry's hand was actually up before mine, if he wants to go first.
Actually, you can go ahead, Spencer. Since I'm an MBA, I want to make sure you undergrads get your questions in.
Okay, thank you, Perry. Hi, Todd. Thank you so much for doing this today.
My pleasure.
My question was, I wanted to ask, what would your advice be for somebody who's interested in working for the company as an undergrad or as a post-grad? Not so much in like the parks and resorts side, because I know there's a lot of positions that are open for sort of just like seasonal work or part-time work, minimum wage work. But what would your advice be for somebody who wants to work more on the corporate side of things, especially because a lot of the internships that I've seen for like WDI or Disney TVA are for like computer science majors or engineering majors and things that I am not at all.
Well, what you did was you honed in on sort of one of Disney's infrastructural weaknesses, was that we do not have a particularly great feeder program for undergraduates into professional roles within the organization. We do have what we consider to be a very strong internship program, or our college program that's park-based, but to your point, it's very much around frontline guest-facing experiences. We are not architected well for work while you're part-time work while you're a student.
Yeah.
We're architected pretty well for postgraduate, but to your point, the employers or the hiring managers are looking for generally pretty specific skill set in order to deliver. So we don't have, we do operate as very separate organizations on a consistent basis. So my only advice, unfortunately, with the systems and tools that we have, is to continue monitoring into our Disney Careers site and see where there are opportunities that align with what you have. Maybe not perfect aligned skills, but similarly aligned skills, and put yourself out there. You should never limit yourself based off of the job description, but you should have some level of fit for what the work is, and do that. I will be honest, most of the entertainment industry, and I think others who maybe, I see we have some seasoned professionals here too, is you work your way into the industry. It is not something that's really well situated often for immediately you come in a manager level role. So you tend to start in areas that are, it's the proverbial, you start working in the mailroom when you want to go work for an agency, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that is the right thing. I actually think that is a huge flaw in the entertainment industry's approach to it. But the reality is, those companies that are most sought after in terms of employment often do get, as I said before, if I'm going to post a position for an entry-level analyst, I'm going to get well over 100 very qualified applicants, and generally they come with some level of experience. And if you're looking at it from an employer's perspective, right, it's almost a no-brainer. You're going to go with someone who comes in that is ready to hit the ground running, versus having to train them up over the next 6 to 12 months and then hope that they'll ultimately deliver. I do think that is again, a flaw in our process, but I don't think that's the answer you're looking for. But I'm just trying to be as transparent and honest as I can about where the industry sits.
No, thank you. I appreciate it so much.
All right, Todd, we're coming down to the finish line. We know you have to go. Thank you so much for your time. If you could really quickly, if you want to tell people if they have more questions, how they can reach you, they can email us, but if they want to reach you directly.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you, I saw that there are a bunch of questions that came in, and what I can do is, if you want to aggregate them, send them to me, and I can respond, written. I can provide that back, and you can share them back with the participants in the room. I do apologize. I'm meeting with one of our leaders today to talk about some restructuring that we're planning for his organization, and time waits for no one. So I wish I could stay for 5 hours, right? I want to answer every question and try to be as interactive as possible. But, I am accessible through the board members here, and I'm happy to answer your questions on an ongoing basis. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn or UCLA One. For those of you who are there, I actually think UCLA One's a great site, and I encourage you to participate as a member there too. So. I wish everyone absolute, success. For those of you who recently graduated, I know that this is a tough time, but just hold out that we are absolutely moving back into a state of, well, I won't say moving back. I would say we're moving into a new normal. But when you have, this industry is one that continues to meet the needs of, of the globe, and there's always going to be needs here. So we'll get there together, and hopefully, again, I can answer any questions that you might have between now and hopefully over the next few days. So I appreciate everyone's joining today.
We appreciate you. Enjoy your weekend.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all.